The 19th Amendment was one of the largest milestones in the American women's rights movement and was a large step towards gender equality in America. This amendment guaranteed that the right to vote would be given to people no matter what sex they are, which was important for women because at the time of passage they could not vote in the majority of American states. Naturally, the people who built this amendment were the women who wanted the right to vote. This was no easy task, and it took decades of protests and hard work from when the idea was first proposed to when it was written into the Constitution and passed. The idea of universal women's suffrage began at Seneca Falls, New York, where it was first proposed in 1848. This proposal didn't hold much weight initially and was seen as too radical to become a reality in America. It wasn't until 1869 when the two largest groups pushing for the amendment, the National Woman Suffrage Association and the American Woman Suffrage Association, were formed that the idea had potential to become a reality. However, it took a while for the voices of these groups to be heard. In fact, things were looking bleak for the leaders of these organizations. For a very long time, no state granted women the right to vote. One woman, Virginia Minor, was arrested for attempting to vote and argued that the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection should protect her right to vote. The Supreme Court heard her case in Minor v. Happersett and unanimously decided that the laws preventing her and other women from voting were constitutional on the grounds that the rights protected by citizenship did not include the right to vote. Momentum for women's suffrage was later picked up by two things, the NWSA and AWSA organizations merging in 1890 to form the National American Woman Suffrage Association, and specific states were beginning to allow women the right to vote, the first of these states being Wyoming in 1890, Colorado in 1893, and Utah and Idaho in 1896. The NAWSA really began to change things itself in 1896 too, beginning a series of marches that would not end for another 2 decades. These protests saw success, with Washington State, California, Arizona, Kansas, Oregon, Illinois, Nevada, Montana, and New York all passing laws in the 1910s granting women the right to vote. The NAWSA liked seeing specific states give women the right to vote, but they were also working for national suffrage. In 1912, 20,000 women fighting for suffrage marched in D.C. By late 1917, the NAWSA had perpetually been protesting at the White House for over a year and a half. These gigantic and lengthy protests eventually got the attention of President Wilson, who gave a pro-suffrage speech in 1918. Later came the passage of the amendment through Congress in 1919 and the ratification of the amendment by the required 3/4 of states in 1920, ending with Tennessee as the 36th state to ratify. The amendment was originally written by one of the founders of the NAWSA, Susan B. Anthony. It read, "The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. Congress shall have the power by appropriate legislation to enforce the provisions of this article." The passage of this amendment displayed the power of women, has empowered women, and given them opportunities since its passage. This is shown in many places. For example, no woman had held a seat in Congress until 1917 with Jeannette Rankin, despite it being legal since 1787, and now in 2014, women hold 99 seats in the 113th Congress. Women getting the right to vote not only led to women getting elected, but also women gaining influence over all people elected and therefore inserting their opinions in elections as a whole. A good example of this is in the 2012 presidential election, where if women didn't vote, Romney would have gotten the majority of the popular vote instead of Obama. The effect can also be observed in political issues themselves. For example, before women gained the right to vote, abortions and contraceptions were not legal anywhere in America, and a large block of the group of people voting for their legislation was and is still women. This amendment gave women a larger potential to change things, and the ability to change things gives people power. The only way to proceed towards a country with more equality is by empowering those who are oppressed and by listening to them. The 19th Amendment makes it easier to do both of those things and more for women, and it is one of the most important additions to the U.S. Constitution.